Hello, everyone, and welcome to Space Cowboy Books Online. I'm Jean-Paul Garnier, and tonight our guest is Marie Vibbert, author of Galactic Hellcats. Marie Vibbert has sold over 60 short stories to top markets like Analog, Lightspeed, and fantasy and science fiction. She's also been translated 3 times by China's science fiction world. The Oxford Culture Review called her work everything science fiction should be. And yes, she wants that as a tattoo. By day, she's a computer programmer in Cleveland, Ohio, where she played for the local women's tackle football team for 4 years. You can find out more about her at marievibbert.com. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Marie to read us an excerpt from her latest novel, Galactic Hellcats.
I thought I would read a little bit from chapter 3, How Key Met Marge. And this is where 2 of the 4 main characters meet. And I have to take my glasses off because I'm old. Key skimmed along the moon's surface, planning a sneaky approach to what was probably the most unused entrance to a colony, when she saw another solo flyer out on a joyride. Almost instinctively, she scanned the registration. Legit, and even better, purchased that day, and the insurance information said, warning, operator under 25. A well-to-do kid with a shiny toy. A mark. Key felt a small tension release in her belly. At the very least, this kid would get her dinner. She changed course to follow and radioed the other flyer. Hey, fellow soloist, how are you? The other pilot sent an acknowledgement receipt, which was better than nothing. Key shadowed him. I'm Key. Is that the Shadowcat 88? That's less than a year old. I never thought I'd see one this close. That's gorgeous. Love the color. Fierce mango, right? Key was just about to give up when a rough voice replied, yeah, I just got it. Hook set. No one can resist a compliment. Sweet. Let's see what she does. Try to catch me. Key fed the throttle and led the other pilot just a little. Didn't want to escape, didn't want to run out of energy, but she had to look like she was getting away. The instinct to chase would draw the mark in. Key glided, let inertia carry her, used the moon's gravity to fishtail and spin. Not only was it fun, it looked fun. Key kept one eye on the mark. After a long second, the mark sped up and matched trajectory. Now you're loosening up, Key said. After a pause, the reply came, I don't do this much. Hooked. Could have fooled me. Where are you from? What do you do? I don't do anything. I mean, I was in the Navy. Key almost pulled away right then. Ex-military? That didn't sound like an easy mark. And she was almost out of battery again and didn't have a clean exit strategy. She slowed and straightened her course. Fresh out of the Navy, huh? What were you? Fighter pilot? Astrogator? Please, please, Key thought, don't say Special Forces. There was a long pause. It wasn't interesting or anything. Come on, you gotta have stories, Key said. Were you in the Ratana War? Did you see the Sky Wolves? I was an ordnance technician. Key blinked. It took her a moment to decode. Something about bullets? Technician? That sounded geeky. The con was back on. No way! Does that mean you know all about blowing stuff up? There was a frustrated puff of breath. I delivered ordnance to people who asked for it. I know how we label the boxes. A Stark clerk, perfect. Listen to you. You carried high explosives and you're so badass you're blasé about it. It's not like that, came the pleased reply. Hey, bomb tech expert badass. My machine's about starving. This has been fun, but I need to pack it in. We're just about to Isla Ibrium. You want to hit that? Not really. How about Tranquility? We could get food. Or Laguna Station's not far. Key relaxed. The plan pieces were falling into place like tumblers in a lock. That's even better. Follow me. I know a good place to park. It was interesting that the Mark didn't want to stay on Luna, but the station really wasn't that far away. Sitting opulently on the Lagrange point between Earth and the Moon, It was probably a cooler place to hang out. A local would know. There was an out-of-date auto park on the far side of the station, or there had been the last time Key was there. The delivery pilot who had taken them back to Earth had parked there because the security station was busted and it was easy to get berthed for free. Key set the coordinates and fumbled through her pack for her signal jammer. The battery indicator was flashing emergency, but she could coast the last little bit. Her first sight of the garage door was encouraging. It was the same banged up steel it was last time. She started the jammer and dialed in the program to open the gate. Key's hand rested on the retro rocket ignition, approaching the gate that was still closed, keeping it casual, just for the mark. She watched the data readout on the jammer, same old wait. There'd been a software upgrade. Shit. She didn't have the power to start again if she braked. Heart pounding, she flicked through files and commands, hand still on the power button, the mark still following confidently behind at a regular pace. Just as she was about to bail, the gate finally began to rise. Key signaled her mark. Slow thing, this gate. Follow me and stay close unless you want to pay extra. The mark's ship practically kissed Key's as she swung into a free space that looked inconvenient to the cameras, assuming that her detector was correct. Key double-checked that the paybot was fooled by her script and added a charge for the mark's ship too, just to be generous. The giant flashing red lights slowed and then turned green and the outer doors sealed. The atmosphere detector binged. Key opened her canopy and jumped out, anxious eyes on the shiny new solo flyer next to hers. The canopy opened. Brown skin, narrow eyes, and brown hair in a smooth bob. Round-faced. The mark looked muscular and taller than Key, padded with health and wealth, so much she almost glowed. She looked anxious. Key held out a hand. Nice to meet you. Call me Key. Margot had pictured someone like her high school gym teacher, robust and peasant healthy. Her voice had sounded big, brusque, and confident. Instead, the other flyer disgorged a tiny bird-like woman with jaundiced skin and ragged patches of multicolored hair standing out like a child's art project on her head. Her spacesuit was shabby, scuffed gray-black with bits of other colors patched into it, shiny red sealant glue and denim blue swatches mostly. One arm of the suit was covered in black permanent markers so that it almost matched. Margot looked doubtfully at the thinness of the woman's arm and the offside padding of her glove, and felt a moment dragging and her paws creeping toward Rude. She reached out her hand and gripped the shiny leather palm. So that's how Key and Margot meet. Is that a good length reading? Okay.
Great. So tell us about the inception of Galactic Hellcats and a little bit about the process of writing it.
So this story actually began when I was 15 in junior high school in 1989, when my twin sister drew a sketch on one of our books, or one of our spiral notebooks that we shared for school. She drew a sketch on the back cover of these three like punk looking women, like relaxing around a very vaguely drawn motorcycle. And I loved it. And I instantly was like, I want to write about those girls. And that was the start of it. I started writing it. It was in, my sister checked her diary. She like got a note in her diary. Marie stole my purple pen to write some new story about motorcycle babes in outer space. So I've got the inception dated historically. The whole idea was, I mean, I was really heavily into the idea of the light cycles in Tron, the speeder bikes in Return of the Jedi, the night sabers vehicles. I really wanted a space motorcycle. That was basically it. I would ride my bike around my neighborhood as a little teeny bopper, just thinking, man, wouldn't it be cool if this was like a motorcycle and if it could transform into a robot and if it was my best friend, and kind of sarcastic. And then you fast forward years and years and years. I always wanted to be a novelist and I was always writing novels. I sent out 3 novels my senior year of high school for publication because I thought I had to publish by the time I was 18 or I was a has-been. Back then, you got really nice personalized rejection letters for your teenage novels, which is nice. I was like 92, and I went to college and I started writing short stories. And a couple of years ago, it was 2012, I did the Clarion Write-a-thon, which is an annual thing where you raise money for Clarion by setting yourself a goal, a writing goal for 6 weeks of the Clarion workshop. And I'd always wanted to go to Clarion and I didn't think I could ever go. So I thought the next best thing was to do the write-a-thon and push myself. So I set myself the goal of writing 50 short stories drafts in 6 weeks. And it was a great goal. And it really pushed me. And I found myself running out of ideas. And then I was like, oh, I know. I don't have to think. I'll just write about those girls I loved writing about when I was a teenager. And so I wrote about a 10,000 word story called The Formation of the Stardust Gang. And my writing workshop all said, hey, this needs to be a novel. So that's sort of where this came from. It's a long story. It was 30 years in the making.
So have been an incredibly prolific short story writer, but now that you have a novel out, will you still be writing short stories, or are you going to shift your focus to longer works? And how does the process differ for you from one format to the other?
The thing is that I have been a prolific short story writer, but I have also been a prolific novel writer the entire time. I can't remember a time since I was 11 years old that I wasn't working on a novel, like writing a brand new novel, revising another novel, and working on 2 or 3 short stories at a time. So that's kind of the way I roll. I tend to, I like to have, I always have the new thing I'm working on and the old thing I'm working on. I use my writer's notebook to keep track of everything so that I don't lose things. Every now and then I go back and I remind myself, yes, I need to revise that story. It actually works out well because with any fiction, you need a break between drafts to distance yourself from it so that you can see it, to edit it, really see what's there. So I find it easy to set aside a novel and work on a short story and then go back to the novel and then work on another novel and then work on another short story. So I think I'm going to continue the same forward in the future. I will say that like promoting a novel has been a whole other level of work. And I'm afraid that it's going to look like I gave up writing short stories just because I've had horrible writer's block since the pandemic started. And I haven't been writing new things. And I've been spending a lot of time on this novel and on another novel that I'm writing for a work for hire thing. But yeah, I juggle it. And I do poetry too.
Do you have a preference to one format or the other, or is it just depending on the type of story you'd like to tell?
And you said, what's the difference? Sometimes I get an idea and I'm like, this is a short story idea. If it's something, it feels like how much you can contain it in one little bit, right? Like if it's going to have 3 beats, it's a flash. If it's going to have 5 to 10 beats, it's a short story. More than 10 beats, it's going to be a novel. Although I have had an idea for, like, there was one of my first short story sales started out as a poem. And I was trying to write this poem for a long time. And I struggled and struggled and struggled with the poem. And then at Clarion, I decided to turn it into a short story. And that became Keep Talking, which sold to Apex and won Story of the Year in 2014. So, and some of my short stories kind of started as novel ideas. And then I'm like, you know what? I can strip this down and I can get it just to what would have been the climax of the novel, and it'll be a short story. And some of my short stories are little bits of novels that nobody's ever seen. But just generally, I find novels are easy. You have so much room to just play. You can spend forever just getting all your characters in one spot. The hard thing with novels is seeing the structure and editing to make sure that the structure is firm, which a short story and writing short stories has helped me learn a lot more about structure, especially as I got better and I could write shorter and shorter short stories. Um, it's like, I like to try to say to people, like, I wanted to be a writer, so I started out writing novels because they were easy. And once I got good enough at writing novels, I could start writing stories that were under 10,000 words. And then I had got good enough on those, I could get under 5,000 words. And then finally, I was able to get under 1,000 words. Just recently, I've been able to write 1,000-word stories because it's just hard. It's hard to get, you have to really understand structure to get together that tidily. That's just my opinion, and that's how I work. I don't know. There's other people who'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Flash is easy. But that's not me.
So you did end up going to Clarion eventually?
I did the very next year, 2013. I raised $500 for the Clarion Foundation in 2012. I think it helped my application. My friends had been after me to apply for years. The problem being that, I work for a living, and I was like, yeah, I get 2 weeks vacation that I barely ever get permission to take. And I have a family of 5 that I am the primary support for. But I hadn't taken vacation for 2 years. I worked for the Mandel School of Applied Social Sciences at Case, which had a very understanding HR person. And so basically I applied, I lied and told them that it was, after I applied, I lied and told them that I already got in so I could start arranging the time off. And I was able to work it out because because our fiscal year ended in the middle of Clarion, I could take 1 year's vacation immediately followed by the next year's vacation and 1 week unpaid. And I was able to go to Clarion. Though I still had to freaking restart the web server at 2 a.m. in California, which was great. But they tell you you're not supposed to do your day job at Clarion. I was not able to not do that.
That's impressive you were able to get through while working, because I know that's no small workload. My understanding is that Clarion either makes or breaks writers, so that's also quite a feat. I was impressed in Galactic Hellcats with your world building, and Galactic Hellcats takes place on multiple worlds. What challenges did this bring up when dealing with your world building? Because you have multiple cultures happening on multiple planets.
Yeah, I wanted there to be multiple cultures and multiple planets. I wanted it to have this sense of moving around, but I wanted to avoid doing anything too stereotypy or culturally insensitive. Honestly, I didn't have much trouble with the world building in this because let's be real, I started writing it when I was 15. So I already had all of this stuff in my head about there would be the matriarchal planet Ratana. I came up with the name of Ratana when I was a freshman in college. My roommate, Malini, suggested it for me. It's a Thai word meaning crystal. And I was like, that's perfect because there's going to be all these crystals. And I was a geology major. So all the stuff about Ratana's rich mineral deposits and, gems and everything kind of was written when I was in college on the side while I was writing other stories for class. I was dreaming up this culture and this society. And there's a whole big passage, by the way, that didn't make it into the book where I talk about the history of Ratana and how their first queen was a geologist. And it was the terraforming that forced the creation of so many metamorphic materials on the planet that made it so profitable as a place for gems. Likewise, the ship folk, I wrote about them a lot in high school and in college. The idea of the ship folk are in the book, they're slow ship colonists. Basically, the idea is you have people on generational ships traveling to a colony. Halfway there, they invent FTL. They arrive at the colony, it's already populated. They're like, oh, well, we'll stay on our ships. And they're nomadic traders and pirates. And so the ship folk were fully formed before I started the book. And I've actually written a couple of short stories just about the ship folk, and one of them sold, but the anthology is still, I think, struggling with funding. So maybe someday you'll see that story in an anthology about the ship folk, called Juniper's Song. And then, Margot is from the moon, and I made the moon suburban. It's the suburbs. It's basically they live in a mall. And then Key lives in Cleveland. It's future Cleveland, but it's Cleveland.
You mentioned having to cut a scene that you really liked. I wondered, with a novel that a concept you've been working with for so long, were there other parts, did you have to kill your darlings in more circumstances? Were there parts you loved but didn't end up going in the novel?
The geology thing was pretty big. Not really. A lot of the things I cut deserved to be cut. There was a big scene in the middle where they were like hanging out in the desert together, and I did it so that they could all become friends over the course of this long scene. And then I was like, you know what, this is a sloppy middle, and I just cut the whole thing. I don't need two scenes where the Hellcats have dinner together. They ended up having one dinner that did both. There is more with there's more with Andre and with Autumn, the sex bots. And there's a whole character who's not in this book that was in the version I wrote when I was a kid, which is a fifth Hellcat named Amarina, who turns out to be a spy. And she's the pretty one. But she has big curly flowing hair. She's a little chubby. She's the pretty one. But I'm going to put that in the sequel. If I get to write a sequel, it's going to have Amarina. It's going to have more of Andre and Autumn, the sex bots, being sex bots together. There's always room for the darlings to show up somewhere else.
And in the book, the girls in the gang, they all come from pretty drastically different economic classes. You basically have a rich girl, a poor girl, a working class girl, and then the prince, royalty, obviously. What inspired you to make these decisions when creating your characters, and how did those interplay off of each other?
That was very deliberate. I have always been interested in class. I remember when I was a kid, I grew up really poor, and my dad was kind of very influential in my thinking, and a staunch unionist and working class rights advocate for himself and his compatriots. And I remembered just constantly being told we lived in a classless society, and it felt wrong, but I accepted it until one of my high school teachers, I don't remember, I think it was high school, I think it was Mr. DiDonato, asked me, so, okay, classless society, tell me, what does someone who works with their hands look like? And I was like, oh, like my dad, they wear jeans, they wear, t-shirts, maybe with the sleeves cut off, and what does somebody who works at a desk look like? And I was like, I see what you're saying, and we all have classes and we know them instantly. And there are divisions between classes. There are those who work at a desk and have to be at that desk for 40 hours, and those who work at a desk who don't. There are those who, were once called unskilled workers, are now called essential workers, and should all be front. And my pizza delivery guy should be getting that vaccine before anybody else. And I don't know what the hell is wrong with the world. But anyway, so I do care about class a great deal. And I decided to make each of the characters from a different class to both because it matters to me and to explore that, and as a way to differentiate them, and as a way to exercise my own breadth as a writer. I'm like, I need to be able to write sympathetic rich people. I should just try just once. Because yeah, I don't know. I'm a pinko. You guys knew that, right? Okay.
Also, I'd love it if you'd tell us a bit about your attitude and techniques concerning gender roles in fiction, particularly in science fiction. Because you turn over in this book, you flip some of the tropes on their head, and I really loved that about it. So I'd love to hear about your attitude towards that.
So yes, I think it was always the first thing that drove me to writing was gender role reversal. I was raised by a single dad who raised daughters, and so it always confused me when people said like men can't be nurturing or men can't take care of kids. I mean, I'd see my dad would be like watching the news and he'd be watching a commercial like, what kind of dude doesn't know how to change a diaper? What's wrong with this commercial? This is sexist bullshit. So that's what I grew up with. And that's my dad impression. I does it better with a beer. Yeah, okay. That was terrible. That wasn't dad. I don't know who that was. I have to say, yeah. So, and then being a girl who was really into science fiction, who liked sports, who I was told, oh, you're a tomboy. Why do you wear dresses? And so all my life I've been stuck with this difficulty with gender roles and that I don't fit them. My husband jokes that I'm the guy in the relationship, and I take out the trash, I do the home repair, he does the mopping and the cleaning, and we get along great. So when it came to writing these stories, when I was a kid, I was always writing stories about girls rescuing boys. And I mean, I even remember when I was like 7 and I saw Cinderella for the first time, and I was like, that was good, but wouldn't it have been better if Cinderella was a boy and the prince was a princess? Wouldn't that be so much better? And people were looking at me like, why? Well, because he would be all vulnerable and helpless and hurt. And isn't that, and why are you looking at me like that? So it was important to, it was just something from my id. It was important to me that there be a handsome prince to rescue. And it was important to me to make him gay because I didn't want anyone assuming he was going to end up with one of the women who rescued him, because ew, that is not a way to start a relationship on equal footing, right?
And in fiction, reversing these roles and taking on ridiculous societal constructs concerning gender, what do you think role fiction has in changing our perceptions of these things in culture?
I think it is important. There was even a study that showed that people remembered when they measured like the brain waves of someone remembering a fictional character, it was the same brain waves of remembering a childhood friend. So that's why representation is so important, right? Because there are people whose only Black friend was the Huxtables on the Cosby Show. That, and studies show that the way to bring down barriers of prejudice and bigotry is to have equal interactions, and to interact as equals. So what better way than when you're in fiction, where we have, this is the only mental telepathy we've developed as far as our society has come. I can take emotions that I had about my imaginary friends and I can make them your imaginary friends. And I think that's very powerful, and very important. And I hope that I'm taking care with what I'm doing to people's brains.
I've always found it amazing that writing is the only direct path into the mind of another. And it's something unique to literature and to poetry and writing. very cool that that can have a physiological effect onto human beings as far as the shaping of our minds. It's very cool. I've got a question from the audience here from Jonathan. How many points of view are there in the novel, and how and why do you choose to make that choice?
The novel is told from 4 points of view. Key and Margot, who you just met, um, Zuleika, who's the third member of the gang, and Prince Thane. Um, so, and I love multiple point of view, and I'm a big champion for multiple point of view. I even try to get it in my short fiction, and short fiction editors don't like multiple point of view. They get really cranky when I try to fit 3 points of view in 3,000 words. But for me, it's important. I feel like there's a problem in our society that we're focused on this idea of the hero and of the individual, and we aren't alone. We are all, units in a vast network of familial relationships and interconnected dependencies. So it's important to me that you don't stick with one point of view, that you get to see different ways people think. So it was always going to be multi-point of view. Originally, it wasn't going to include Thane's point of view, but then I realized that was being mean to the poor boy. He's not just an object. He's not just there for me to cry because he's hurt and then rejoice when he's rescued. That is not, he is his own man. He's not like the other boys. I threw that in. He says that because I was just playing on that trope. Not like the other girls. He's not like the other boys. So what I did was, after I wrote the first draft through, I then went through and I made like a list of all the chapters and whose point of view they were in. And then I tried to balance it a little to make sure that there were equal number of point of view chapters for each character. And I did end up changing some of the chapters, changing whose point of view a particular section was, just to keep it more balanced. And I found that sometimes that made the scene work much better. Like, I didn't realize that this was Thane's scene, not Zuleika's, until I was like, hey, Thane hasn't had a scene for 2 chapters. Let's have him have this scene because he's in it. And it's a lot of fun to take the same event and show it from different perspectives. And it's fun also to like have one character go like, wow, Zuleika is so deep. She's really thinking deep thoughts. And then Zuleika's point of view, I wonder if he'll go out with me. Is he looking at me? Oh, she's looking at me. Is my makeup okay? To contrast our inner world and our external world.
I liked what you said a minute ago about the unreality of heroes and the kind of false emphasis we place on that in our culture. I was fortunate enough to take a class from you a month or 2 ago, and in the class you were critical of Campbell's hero's journey analysis of literature. I wonder if you would expand upon that a little bit, since you were just talking about hero worship in our culture and where that goes wrong.
Yeah, I guess I was really nasty to the hero's journey there. I know part of it is I'm just tired of hearing about it, and so many people are like, we have the formula for writing a story and here it is. Because I don't think it's the formula for writing a story. It's a formula for writing a story of this type about this type of person having this type of journey. Not everybody is going to refuse the call when they first hear it. Not everybody is going to need to, find a guru to lead them forward. It's very much a, young person's coming out into the world story. And I think that can be limiting. That said, I mean, I've seen it done good. I've seen it done well. There was that Jude Law movie where he plays a safecracker. That movie used the hero's journey well, because he was a terrible person, and his journey is realizing that he could become a good person. He just had to choose to. So yeah, I just think it's limiting, and I think that people have put too much emphasis on it, as though it's the secret way to do this, and there is no way to do this. I think one of my favorite quotes about writing was, and I don't remember who said it, is that writing a novel will teach you how to write that novel. And, and then you got to write the next one, and you're going to learn all over again.
I think we often forget that the novel is a fairly new form as well, and that there are new forms that may arise.
Yeah.
Another question from the audience here. This one is from Francine. Who are some of your female role models?
Well, one of them's here in the talk. Hi, Mary. Mary Grimm was my professor in college, so I have to embarrass her. She was very instrumental in teaching me how to write good, and I still rely heavily on a lot of things that she taught me. I would also say Karen Joy Fowler, who I just admire her dogged determination. She's like, I can't write a novel. I'm like, but you did. And she's like, yeah, I wrote 20 short stories and I put them together and they made it a novel. And that's the only way I got through it. And Mary Trezillo, who is the head of my writing workshop, who I met her when I was 16. That's how I joined the Cajun Sushi Hamsters. I met Mary Trezillo at a local writers conference at the community college that I had talked my high school into sending me to. I remember at the time it was like $100 to go to this conference. And I was like, oh, that's a huge fortune I will never, ever, ever see in my life. And my high school principal said, yeah, we'll pay it. And I just couldn't believe that they trusted me so much to give me $100. Now I realize, now that I am bougie myself, that it was not that big an ask. But Mary was weirdly impressed with me when I told her, oh, I wrote 3 novels and I'm 16. She invited me to join the writing workshop, even though I'm crap. I was crap back then. I mean, let's face it, I was 16. But just to have that much energy and to give it to other writers and to elevate them is a tremendous, tremendous gift and talent. How's that?
Works for me. Here's another question from the audience. This one is from Dwayne. Are there any rules in writing that you've especially enjoyed breaking, and why?
Breaking the rules, yes. Let me think. I definitely enjoyed breaking the whole, that you shouldn't head hop. That was one. People were telling me, you're not supposed to head hop. I'm like, oh, watch me head hop. I wrote a whole novel that's in first person omniscient, just so it's nothing but head hopping. I may never sell that, but I did it for that reason, because I'm like, I'm sorry. When I'm thinking about this story, when I'm an omniscient, why do we have omniscient narrators if they aren't able to head hop? That's omniscience. Okay, that's the end of my rant there. Any other rules I break? I don't know. I like to, I don't know. I have to think about that. I try to. I'm blanking. I'm sorry.
We can come back to that if you think of something.
Yeah.
So, having released your debut novel, obviously it's not the first novel you've written, but the first one to come out into the world for us to enjoy, is there anything you would have done differently if you could do it over again?
Oh yeah. So much difference. I wasted a lot of time on this thinking that I couldn't write it. I think that it took me 30 years to like polish this up and send it out into the world, because I listened too much to, Jesus, you just ate. Sorry, this kitty cat. I listened too much to these people who were saying things like, you can't write faster than light travel because it's not really real. And you can't do this. And there wouldn't be a galactic civilization. And everything in all of the novels you read in high school that you loved is wrong. And nobody's going to buy that. And you can't have space combat, and you can't have space chase scenes, and you can't have anything you want because we say so, us. And it took me a long time to realize that the guys saying that shit weren't exactly writing their own novels, were they? And they were running right off and enjoying the hell out of Star effing Wars, okay? They were wearing the Doctor Who t-shirt and telling you couldn't do time travel because it doesn't make mathematical sense, and you couldn't have intelligent computers because of the singularity, and you couldn't do whatever. And I'm just like, and I realized that at a certain point, all of those dudes, you know, let's like the Simpsons comic book guy, they're just trying to keep you down because they're down and they don't want you to rise above them. So yeah, not listening to people is good. Writing your weird. Go ahead and write it. Don't care if it's been done. Don't care if it's trite, if like, oh, it's just another throwaway adventure story. Well, so is everything, right? That's what's fun in life. Yeah, I think if I had it to do over again, I would have been less careful. And I definitely would have written a better query letter. My query letter was not good. And part of that was, I think, because I was trying very hard to make the query letter appear like the sort of novel that other people might write, that is more mainstream and more expected and not actually what I had written. And a problem with that is if you go to a lot of websites and essays and articles about how to write a query letter, they all say, so you have one hero and it's only one hero. Even if you have more than one in your book, you only have one for your query letter. And it's in a world where different from ours, protagonists must thing in order to MacGuffin. Or stakes will happen. And that doesn't fit, but much like the hero's journey doesn't fit every type of journey, that sort of pitch doesn't fit every type of book. And I tried to cram the Hellcats pitch into that formula. And I think that's part of the reason why I got 46 agent rejections in a row.
Well, I'm glad that you persevered through that, and that makes me really excited for future novels where you're not constraining your imagination at all. And it's one of the things that I liked about Galactic Hellcats is there isn't exactly a main character. It's the biker gang that's the main character, and that's a very enjoyable aspect of this novel. So, leading into my next question, there, are we going to see a sequel to Galactic Hellcats? And whether the answer is yes or no, what other projects and books do you have in the works? What can we expect coming from you in the future?
I mean, whether I sell it or not, I am writing a sequel. I'm calling it temporarily Hellcats in Love, and it's going to be great. And it's going to open in Andre the Sexbot's point of view. I'm very excited about writing his point of view. And it's, yeah, and like Thane will finally get a boyfriend, and I've got ideas, and I'm bringing in Amarina, who I was sad about not being able to put in. But I'm working on that. I'm revising this absolute trash novel that I wrote for this trash company, just to, because I thought if I proved I could produce on deadline, a novel on deadline, it would be good for my career. I don't know if it will be or not. And I have a novella coming out from Analog. Should be coming out probably this summer. It's called The Unlikely Heroines of Callisto. Unlikely Heroines of Callisto Station, and it's about an engineer with manic depression. They don't call it that anyway. Bipolar disorder, and a really rough and gruff and suppressing her emotions maintenance engineer and the two of them don't like each other but have to join forces to save their space station from space pirates. You can tell I just love space pirates. I'm always going to throw space pirates in there somewhere. So that's kind of what I've got going on. I had a story come out today in Daily Science Fiction. I have a couple of stories that are waiting to come out, I think, at this point. Not as many as I would like, but Secondhand Destinies will be coming in analog soon, and Room to Live, also in analog, and The Plus One in fantasy and science fiction in May. So those are my stories coming out soon. Like I said, I haven't been writing a lot this year. I feel like such a slacker.
I just threw a link in the chat to Daily Science Fiction where you can read Marie's story that came out today. I'm looking forward to reading that myself. Just one last question from me before we wrap it up, and if the audience has any more questions, now is the time to put them in the chat. I'm curious if you have any more plans of teaching in the future, because you're such a wonderful instructor. In 4 short classes, I learned an incredible amount from you, and I hope to see you teaching more, but do you have any plans for this, or writing nonfiction about writing, or do you ever mentor younger writers?
I'm going to teach a class on working class science fiction for Literary Cleveland. It's going to be kind of a really quick survey of things that have been written about working class characters and working class issues in science fiction of the past and present. And I mean, I definitely, I do enjoy teaching. I think the class that you attended was one of my favorites that I've taught. I think it really helps when it's a very energetic group. I mean, I try to mentor. I feel like I'm kind of the sophomore mentoring the freshmen at this point, but I'm always trying to reach out and do more things. Obviously, with the book coming out, I am volunteering for all of the talks that I can get. I'll be doing a talk for a writers group in Pittsburgh on how to sell short stories, which they asked me to do. And I'm glad, because I was like, that's a thing I can talk about. Because there's very few things in writing that have clear, easily to define rules of behavior and process. And selling is one where you can make it mechanical. And I think it helps a lot if you make it mechanical. If you divorce your emotions from it, is very important. So yes, I do want to teach more, and I will be.
Well, please let us know when that happens, and we will spread the word, because Marie is a wonderful teacher. I know at least a few of the people in the audience would love to study with you. Thank you so much, Marie, for joining us this evening at Space Cowboy. Thank you to our audience. We've shared a link in the chat where you can pre-order the book. It comes out in a few weeks. Marie has also graciously offered to provide signed book plates if anyone buys the book. And we will be happy to connect you with one of those. You can get in touch with me at spacecowboybooks@gmail.com. There she is with the sweet book plate.
I will sign it and I will mail it to you, and then you will have a socially distanced signed copy.
So please get in touch, whether you pre-order now or if you want a copy, you can get one from us, and we will make sure we get that signed for you. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Marie. Congratulations on your debut novel. Galactic Hellcats is one hell of a read. Please get it.